All right, here we have Think D from page 159. The directions say add quotation marks, commas, and end marks to these sentences adapted from Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. So the first thing I want to do on number 1, what doest thou here? Asked a man named Goodwill. These are quotes directly from the story, so when I read it aloud, it'll help you to see where the quotation is and where the rest of the sentence is. So the first thing I want to do is mark quotation marks at the beginning of my sentence. And where does that quotation end? Well, the word asked tells me that that's where the rest of my sentence is, or it gives me an idea of where it is. So what doest thou here? That's a question mark. So I'm going to put a question mark. And notice that I need to put my end quotation marks. At the very end of my sentence, I need a period. All right, let's just take a moment and look at what we've done so far. We've got quotation marks. We have our ending mark for the quote inside the quotation marks. And then I have an ending punctuation for the whole sentence. Number 2, Christian replied, I come from the city of destruction, but I am going to Mount Zion to be delivered from the wrath to come. So this word replied is my clue word for a quote, because that's one of those speaking words. Now in this case, I want a comma after replied and then my quotation marks. I need to be careful that my quotation marks are actually located after the comma, but before this letter I. Okay? And then I need to go to the very end of my sentence and put my period and end quotes. Notice that the ending mark goes inside the quotes if the quote was the last part of the sentence. Number 3, will you let me enter through the gate, sir? Asked Christian. This word sir is direct address. Christian is talking to sir. So I need to keep that inside my quote. I'm going to put a comma after sir to separate the quote from the rest of my sentence. I'm going to put my quotation marks at the beginning and at the end, and then I'm going to put a period at the end of my sentence. Number 4, certainly you may enter, Christian, said Goodwill. All right, Goodwill spoke here, so that tells me that Christian is part of the quote. He's talking to Christian. He's answering him from the previous sentence. So I need to put my quotation marks at the beginning, and I want to make sure that they are just above where my sentence starts. And then I need a comma after Christian because that's the end of my quote. Now, here's a mistake that a lot of students make. They stick the quotes just anywhere. And notice how those quotes are not located after that comma. They need to be after the comma. So I'm going to go back and erase this and place those quotation marks in the proper spot after the comma. Now I still need to put a period at the very end of my sentence. Boy, it's hard to do with one of these little pens. Okay, number 5. Mr. Interpreter next asked, Christian, what would you have me do for you? Now I know that they want me to put in the commas. So this comma goes with Christian, which is the person he's speaking to. So I know that I need a comma after asked. You see how I'm having to do some deductive reasoning here? So after that comma, after asked, then I'm going to put my quotation marks to start my quote. And this particular quote, Christian, what would you have me do for you, is a question. So I need a question mark and then my end quotes. Notice that the question mark comes inside the quotation marks. Number 6, would you give me guidance for my journey? Asked Christian. Here's my speaking word. So I know that that goes with the rest of my sentence. That's not going to be inside my quotes. So I have my quotation marks at the beginning. Would you give me guidance for my journey? Is a question, so I need a question mark. Then I need my end quotes. Notice how those end quotes are elevated. They go after the question mark, and then I still need a period at the end of the sentence. That period is for the whole sentence. It's not for the question that's being asked inside the quote. Number 7, interpreter said, and this capital S tells me where my quote starts here, some will pretend to help you, but their way goes down to death. So I'm going to have a comma after said. Oops, that's not very good. I'm going to erase that because it didn't come out in the right spot. And put it again. And then I need quotation marks after the comma, but above and before the S in some. And then I still need a period. Ooh, that looks like a comma because it came too big. So you see how I'm erasing it. Oh, that's not erasing. This one erases. All right. I want a period and then quotation marks. If my mark looks like a comma instead of a period, guess what? My teacher's going to count it wrong. So I need to make sure that my mark looks like what it's supposed to be. And if I mess up, I need to erase it. Therefore, you should use a pencil, not a pen, to do your work. All right, number 8. Christian, listen carefully to all I tell you, cautioned interpreter. So here is my speaker. I need quotation marks in front of Christian, and then I need a comma after you. Well, that doesn't look like a comma, does it? I mean, it looks like a comma, but it's in the wrong spot. Let me say it that way. So I'm going to erase that comma and fix it. And then I need quotation marks after that, 2 of them, and then a period at the end. So I need to make sure that my marks are accurate. Number 9, as Christian looked on the cross, someone said, thy sins are forgiven. So this has got a lot of sentence before the quote actually begins. But once again, all I have to do is find that word said, and it helps me to separate what the quote is from the rest of the sentence. And I'm going to use a comma after said, and then the quotation marks. And then I need a period after forgiven and end quotes. Notice that these end marks always go inside the quotes. Also notice that when I've got a quote that comes after the beginning of my sentence, like this one does, I want this comma to separate the rest of my sentence, and it does not go inside the quotes. All right, number 10. After Christian's burden rolled into the tomb, he sang, what a place is this? Notice that I have a word that would normally start a question, but it's not asking a question. Is it saying, what place is this? No, it's saying, what a place is this? So I know I need an exclamation point, because that word that is a question word at the beginning of my thought indicates that it's an exclamation. So I'm going to use ending quotes after my exclamation point. And now I have to separate my quote from the rest of my sentence. So I'm going to use a comma here to separate the quote from the rest of the sentence.